Good morning, Rachel. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back, Ryan.
I am so excited. And, when I was thinking about this little mini series that we're doing and how much I enjoyed our conversation when you're on the panel with Dr. Stacy, and, shout out to Dr. Stacy and all the work that you guys have done. And I was super excited to have you on, because then when I sent you over the questions and just kind of the topics, you're like, oh, no big deal. And I'm like, oh, that's so nice. Cause we can all get on here and pretend like everything's fine and normal and insane with family businesses, but we all know that's not always the truth. So for the listeners that had maybe didn't get a chance to take a peek at that panel, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, the family business background?
Okay. So I'm Rachel Wallis-Andreasson. I am part of a family business, and I'm part of the G2 side. My dad founded the company in May of 1968. He graduated from high school, served in the 101st Airborne. His dad died when he was 13 years old, so he started working in a gas station, and he founded our company in May of 1968 with one location, 5 employees. And today we have catapulted to over 1,200 team members, and we're bringing in G3, the third generation. So our business is on-the-run convenience stores, dirt cheap liquor and tobacco stores. We have a commissary where we make all of our fresh food for the convenience stores. We operate our own car washes, and then we have a brand called Brightworks for tunnel car washes. And then we have a lubricant distribution division, fuel distribution, wholesale, and transport company. So it's a lot of businesses all rolled up now into 2 holding companies. And that's just all part of the story of, the questions that you're going to be talking about today.
What a cool story. I mean, when I was reading about the company story, I mean, from one location, that is ridiculous. I mean, the amount of things that have to go fairly well for like a long period of time is just admirable. I'm super excited to hear more of the story. And one of the questions that I wanted to tee it up with, Rachel, is that what did the business mean to you? Is your identity? Like, what was the narrative being told from your dad, from your siblings? Like, what was the relationship that you had with the business from an early childhood?
Yeah, well, I mean, the business was there when I was born. So Dad started it in May of 68. He married my mom in December of 68, and I'm born the next July. And my dad was such a visionary. Interstate 44 was that, Route 66 was the highway. Interstate 44 that replaced Route 66 was still in the process of being built and didn't get finished till 1972. But he had the visionary to build the first convenience store, and it opened right the month that I was born. So, I mean, we definitely grew up in it. I mean, it was our identity. And I mean, it just, Dad worked hard, Mom worked hard on the books, and Dad would bring home.
Was she involved?
So she was involved from day one, running in the office and the payroll and the bank recs. And, my dad had a high school education. My mom had a college education. So she did the college stuff and he did the operational stuff. And he would bring home bags of quarters from the car washes, and he would lay them out on the table. And I mean, I'm the oldest of 4 children. And so I have 3 younger brothers, and we would all just roll up the quarters in the little paper things and stick them in the canvas bank bag so Dad could take them back to the bank. But it was always a bright spot. We never knew the hardships of the business, and there was definitely hardships. Like in the 70s, they, were losing tons of money and didn't know if they would make their next payroll. And our local bank, person stepped up and helped them get my parents get an SBA loan and save the company in the 70s. And, but from then, they just kept reinvesting and plugging along, and it just, so it was part of our identity. I mean, we talked about it at the dinner table. We rolled, the quarters, and we all worked in the business at some point. So
what was the, you mentioned your dad was a visionary. I mean, did he envision what you guys have now, or like, what was he talking about back when he had started it?
Well, it's interesting. I just met a person that was an employee, like when she was 18 in one of our convenience stores in a rural market. Just met her. And she said, your dad would come in with pieces of paper envisioning a convenience store. Because at the time it was, service bays or, just a gas station where you just walked in and paid. And so she's like, I'm like, oh my God, like I wrote a book about my dad and I said he's a visionary, but like, I had other examples, but I didn't have your example. So he just,
cool.
it was so innate, the business, the gas station, the customers, just the relationships. It was so innate to him that he loved it, and he visualized, growth, I would say, growth, customers,
Awesome.
Relationships, and making his team, whoever was on the team, feel just part of the ownership.
So how did he pass that vision on to you, Rachel, and your siblings? Like, was it more like, hey, this is what the business could be? Or is it like, hey, the business is our wealth machine? Or like, what was the kind of the purpose, the business was, or the narrative that was going on with the family? Does that make sense?
I think it was always just the basic principles of working hard and taking care of your team and giving back to the community and reinvesting. Reinvesting was a huge part of it. And my parents did that, for a solid 30 years. Everything they made went back into the business. And, he always said, it's important to manage the cash, because you can get a lot of cash at one time, but if you spend it, it's not going to pay for your taxes or your bank debt. So I don't know. He was just core
smart man.
Business. Yeah. And it's amazing, when somebody has no formal education about operations or running a business, but he was not afraid to surround himself with people that he knew, that he trusted would take care of the things that he wasn't confident in, but he was just a unique leader. So, and he died in 2001. Cool. So he's been gone, but he's left this fabulous, legacy that, my mom and my brothers and I, and the third generation is excited to continue on.
So, which is a super sad story. And how old was he when he died? Because
he was 58. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so young. When I was reading that, I was like, oh my gosh. And I want to make sure we come back to that, kind of leading up with the story, because I want to hear kind of how the progression went, Rachel. But like, I think about like you and your siblings. Was there a mandate you guys had to work in the business? Like, was it like what was the discussion as related to like your guys' future career, your career?
Yeah, I've definitely talked to a lot of other children of family businesses, and either, feeling the obligation or not even being invited. And I would just say it wasn't like that for us. I mean, we, I don't know. I just it was a constant work as kids. I have a picture on my phone, and I'm helping Dad wash, a tanker trailer truck when I'm 3 years old. And so I just feel like it was part of our blood and our life. And so we all, none of us were asked. I mean, my parents did come down and ask me to come join the family business. So that was a true ask. When we did our first major, it was the third acquisition of the company, but it doubled the size of our business.
Okay.
And it got us into the St. Louis metro market. So we were, going from like 250 employees to over 500, and we were buying Mobil Oil Corporation assets and their employees. So they were going from Mobil Oil Corporation, public company, to private company, Wallace companies. And so they asked, they said, we've got to hire management. So if you want to come back to the business, now's the time. So, but I never felt, I knew I wanted to work for the business. I loved it. I loved the people that worked for us. I loved the energy around it. And I knew eventually I wanted to do it. So
you said come back to the business. So what do you mean by that?
Went to college, got a business degree at Tulane, and then went to work, knowing I did not want to come back and work directly for the family business. I mean, I wanted to go out and get my own experience. I wanted to know I could do it on my own, not just come back because I was a family member. So I worked for Taco Bell in Miami and ran Taco Bell's. Then I worked for South Seas Plantation as a training coordinator, more on the HR side. And then the acquisition was coming through, and, my parents would keep me informed of, hey, it looks like it's going through. It's not going through. Okay, now it's going through. Now's the time. If you want.
Now we need you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And, I didn't do that. The whole world crashed in 2009 when I went, and I was looking at different jobs, and I went straight into the family business. And what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that? Because that's always a big debate. And I don't know if I have a clear answer for anybody, because it's very unique, but jumping right into the family business versus going and getting your own experience. I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, everybody's biased to their own experience, but
right.
I feel like when you are part of a family, people don't know if you earned it or you're there because your last name is the same as a family business. So I think for your own personal confidence, knowing that you can go out and work at another company, knowing how those companies operate, because if you don't have comparisons, then it's either really good or really bad when you come back to your own family business, but you don't have an outside opinion. So I would always strongly encourage everyone to work outside their family business. And then I am 4 years and, by school older than my next brother. So all my brothers ended up going to college, working outside the business before they came back to the family business.
Super cool. And so kind of on this topic of like the job and the career, like one thing I end up talking a lot about, especially from our training, is the separation, Rachel, of the business, the equity, the asset, and jobs.
Yes.
You get a W-2 for what you do. Family business is more so than even most businesses conflate those two. Family business is even more so. Like I've heard stories, Rachel, where like you're not going to get any of the estate unless you come work here. I mean, like just slave labor essentially. Yeah. So like, how did you guys have was it separate for you guys? How did you guys navigate that dynamic?
Yeah, I would say everything in a family business is an evolution. And so yes. So when we all came into the family business, I started in HR. So we set up compensation systems and we had family governance policies. So, you have your minimum, midpoint, and maximum. And we said, okay, family members are always going to start 10% over the minimum. That's just where their salary is going to be. And it's going to be for the job that they take. Nobody's going to get paid equally or some inflated salary just because you're a shareholder as well.
How did you get to that? I mean, like that, I have to interrupt because like, you said that so clearly, but like, was it that clear when you guys started, or how did you get that?
Well, because I worked in the family business, 6 years before my next brother, came in. And so it was, I guess it's what, obviously dad's there and, you were working through all these HR processes. And I don't know, I guess personally, I just thought it's the right thing to do. I mean, I just feel like if you're going to take a job in the company, you shouldn't get paid any more than somebody from the outside should get paid. And you should be part of that pool because you are part of management. You're an employee. And then over here in this bucket, because you're an owner, you may get other benefits. I mean, obviously, when have ownership, we get tax distributions. And that's kind of where we started out. But eventually, 14 years later, the company was doing well. We had done more acquisitions. And so then we started getting equity distributions. But there are those three buckets. And
sorry, I interrupted you in those three buckets. So you got your salary. So I don't know if I derailed your train of thought.
Yeah, no. So, I mean, it's just, so you basically asked how we got to these concepts, but there's also a lot of, there's a lot of benchmarking. There were a lot of family businesses in the convenience store industry, and paying market salaries to family members seemed to be the right thing to do. We had other family businesses that did not do that. And it just, it didn't make as much sense.
You watch what happened. You're like, yeah, let's not do that.
That makes no sense. No sense. Because it's a whole system. I mean, your CFO can't know that you're paying a family member $200,000 for a $80,000 job. And then what happens when you got to, replace that? It's just not fair to the company.
Or fair period, right?
Or okay. And it needs to, right.
It's so it's again. I love how clear you say it, but like it's definitely a thing that happens all the time. And like you think about the conflicts that arise from that, and then like, I can't even like my head can't even go there because of how, like we know what can happen. And so with it, you talked about family governance. So like, was there like, how did your dad and your mom start setting up the family governance? And was there any particular way?
Yeah, it didn't really happen. So when this acquisition happened in 1993, my dad brought in professional management. I mean, so he brought in like a high level guy from mobile to help us run this new entity in this metro market. So it kind of established the stage of this is a solid business that's owned by a family. It's not a family business being operated by a family.
Ooh, yeah.
So so that was the stage. And we set up all these professional practices. So we brought in the balanced scorecard because Mobil Oil Corporation was a Harvard business case study. And so we brought that in to communicate our strategy. And we brought in a phantom stock program for our key employees that were not family members to keep those people and to, have a retention program for them. It wasn't until we did another acquisition in 2000 that Dad and Mom had the foresight to put that acquisition in G2's name. So it was so instead of just putting more in their estate, more on the line, the company, backed up all the debt, but our names, my brothers and I, had 98% of the company, and my mom and dad had 2. So that was the first part of ownership. And then that was right before my dad died. So that established the stage for what we did later. So we did the largest acquisition we did closed in 2016, but that's the same practice we use. So we put that acquisition, that real estate, all in G3's name.
Wow, super cool. And so going back to it sounds like that acquisition in 93 really kind of accelerated a lot of stuff with your involvement and the company. But where was it prior to that, Rachel, that your dad and mom started it's viewing the actual asset so many times? I mean, again, especially the fact your dad's high school and your mom's college education, there's college educated people like yours and truly here who didn't know anything about valuations running a family business. So where along that journey did they start to realize that how this thing is valued versus just the annual cash flow that was coming out of it? Because a lot of times people are solving for annual cash flow and trying to distribute, the funds to the family members each year on the annual cash flow versus saying, hey, this is an asset. Was there a certain catalyst that helped them understand that?
It was an evolution. I think they always surrounded themselves with advisors. My dad was so big on benchmarking, calling other people up, asking questions, having good accountants, having good attorneys. They invested everything back into the business. We invested everything back into the business until the year 2015. So there was no other mindset other than this is our baby and we are investing in it and we're continuing to grow it. And so we continued to do acquisitions. And really it wasn't until G3, got this ownership that we said, okay, let's value this asset. Let's, that's when we got to the two whole. So before we had, every time we did an acquisition, we created a new LLC. And so, we had
fun tax returns,
nine operating companies and 9 tax returns. And we rolled it up into 2 companies specifically for the reason that we wanted to take all the shareholders and divide out the percentage of their ownership. So when we started doing equity distributions, it was completely fair and relative to the shares that were owned. So we had to have it valued. You have to have an outside person come in and value it, which we did. And
But did you and your siblings? So with you and your siblings, what was the process of transitioning or transferring some of those shares or the equity to you and your siblings? Was there any kind of stipulations for active versus non-active as it relates to the equity and the asset and the estate planning, or how did you guys divvy that stuff up?
No, just because, like I said, in 2000 we got ownership of a big entity, so that was clear. And then in 2016 we gave G3 ownership of this entity, so that was clear. And so then when we bubbled it all up and had an outside person say, this is the value of the whole bucket, and here's your percentage, and here's the value of your percentage. And we do it and it does not matter if you're active or not active in the business. You are a shareholder and this is your equity. And it's, we have clear operating agreements. Only bloodline family members are part of that shareholder agreement. And no one's has ever said, I want to sell 100 of my shares yet. But we did engage with a family office in 2017 because we felt we needed a quarterback for our family. So we needed a quarterback to consult with our CFO, a quarterback to consult with our accountant, with our attorney, with each independent family. What are your goals? What are your savings? And then us collectively as shareholders. So that family office is our quarterback, and they've kind of led us through these newer processes to make it clear for each shareholder. So you can understand the difference. Yeah, if you want to come to work for our company, you're going to be in a management position, a management role. You're going to follow the rules of the team. If you just want to continue to be a shareholder, then we're trying to establish the next step as a family council. So here's how your voice will be heard as a shareholder. Here's how you would operate if you were in management.
I want everybody to just rewind and listen to that again. Because regardless of your family business, Rachel, the amount of people that it's so clear talking to you, and it's so awesome because so many times it's the percentages of the estate and the business are divvied up based on active versus non-active. I mean, there's no clarity. So then what people do is they just, clam up and then they do what they think they need to do for their own survival, which is obviously conflict related. Yes. And so it's just super fascinating how clear that was for you guys on the equity estate plan side. As far as the roles, did you guys have discussions, or did any one of you guys want to be the CEO, or have posturing for different positions as related to the operations and your guys' careers?
Yeah, so I did want to be the CEO. I went back and got my MBA in 2012, and by 2013, I'm like, I would really like to be the CEO of this company, but if it's not going to work out here, I would like to know if I'm not going to be considered, because then I might want to choose to go somewhere else where I can grow my career. And so my mom gave my brothers that decision, because do you really want to report to a sibling? So my brothers, and we had an advisory board at the time. So between my brothers and the advisory board, we did a 5-year succession plan. We changed a lot of things. We brought in, we already had a CFO. So we brought in a COO. So then my brothers, one brother had already moved to the board, out of management, 2 of the board. Okay. The other 2 then under this transition wanted to, it was all part of the plan. Not that they wanted to move to the board, but it was part of the plan of the succession. So then that happened January of 2017, but it didn't really work out. It didn't really work out, and I could tell it wasn't working out relative to family harmony, relative to actually letting the succession plan that we had developed over the past 5 years come to life. So I left the company, but the great thing is that when my brothers moved to the board, we established a board salary that was fair, and we felt was, I guess, reflective of the work that you still have to do as a shareholder, but not working in management. So anybody that is in family business that is in management, not happy with management, doesn't want to stay in it, I don't know if there's a board position for everybody, but I strongly encourage that there be a healthy board salary. So if you want out of management and you wanted to sit on the board, or you were a shareholder, there are these different buckets. And fortunately, our family had the foresight to say, to not let anybody feel trapped. There are other options besides just getting this management salary. So
were there any, what were some of the, if you're willing to share, what were some of the issues that arose that made it obvious that it wasn't going to work?
Well, I think that after my dad died, my mom just didn't really want to give up responsibility, and it really did become part of her identity. And I just woke up and realized one day I can leave the family business and still be happy, but asking her to change will make her more sad than me leaving. And so it was just time, it just wasn't going to change. And I can say that it, now 5 years later, it is now changing, but I personally didn't have the patience to wait, do the 5-year succession and then wait, 5 more years for things to change. And I don't really know if they would have changed if I would have stayed. Things happen for a reason. And,
amen to that.
Stacy said, she's like, you don't realize it now, but, someday you'll realize that you'll have more influence on the board than you did as CEO. And I said, okay, one of those things, can't see it now, Stacy, but I'm going to trust you. But today, 5 years later, I can look back and say, our family's in such a better place. We're really working together as a board, not as individuals. And we're really focused on bringing in the 3rd generation in a wholehearted way. And it's not easy. I mean, it feels easy to say, screw it, just sell it. We don't have to deal with each other. But, when you take the emotion away and you really get grounded in, if you have a successful family business, and I'm just going to say, like, we've been blessed that we've have a successul family business. I mean, if this was not successful, obviously we wouldn't be having this conversation.
You're not fighting over the debt, right?
Yeah. So so we've really been blessed. Dad left a great foundation for us, and now we're plugging away.
That's amazing. What I think you just touched on a thing that everybody that has partners or family involved thinks about. F it. Let's sell the damn thing and get untrapped. And it's the trap of the emotional feeling, because you can be trapped financially or trapped like with, the mechanical stuff as it relates to business. But I'll be honest. I mean, I tried to quit multiple times. Like, I was just like, how about you can pound sand and like, I want to move on. I'm so embarrassed of some of the stuff I did when I was 22 at this point. But like, and both of us have that same thing where like, we didn't have the tools to talk about the things that you're talking about. And so like, it's just like the Groundhog's Day, same conversation over and over. And so like, what were some of the things that helped when you guys ran into those conflicts? Like, how did you see the light at the end of the tunnel, or what tools did you have that were at your disposal that helped you work through those conversations so you didn't blow the whole thing up and sell it?
Yeah. Okay. So Dad died in 2001. So now my brothers, my mom, and I are meeting on a regular basis, just as the family that's left. And none of my brothers were married or had not married before my dad died. So in 2003, it was abundantly clear we needed help. We needed a consultant. We needed somebody to help us with communication. We needed someone to train us on what hat are we wearing, a family member hat, a manager hat, or an owner hat. So we got a family business consultant. It was a lady and her husband. She was a psychologist and he was the business professor. And they came in and taught us communication skills. I mean, we had family meetings, and we never, from 2003 on, we've never not had an outside consultant. We are on our third one, the family office. As we have evolved and as the business has evolved, we've evolved with the consultant that we need for what we are facing. And so we would not be where we are without the help of those outside people, because I think it's, family businesses can be your greatest pain or your greatest joy. And it's your greatest pain when you are dealing with your mom and siblings and you don't feel like you're being heard. You don't feel like you're being understood, and you feel like things aren't fair. I mean, that's the worst feeling of all, because this is your family and they're like supposed to be there to support you. And so being able to work through all those, I'm a wholehearted believer in the right consultant at the right time, because you cannot, just like we talked about last episode, I mean, with, getting a psychologist and an executive coach, there is some stuff you cannot fix on your own, because you can't see it.
And you're talking to yourself and you're convincing yourself of the same shitty problems that you've been having.
You're so weighted down by the emotions that you can't even, like Stacey said, I was on the ledge. I mean, I couldn't get out of my own head. So
what in the timeline, where was that? And where did you reach out? Yeah. The ledge. Explain, elaborate.
The ledge started in 2013, and she definitely helped me through it. I mean, looking back, I probably 100% didn't come off the ledge until I left the company. That's probably my reality. But
was some of the things that you were talking about, not being heard, not feeling understood, was that some of the root issues, or what defined the ledge, if you will?
Yeah, for me, it was just more that I had come into the company in 1993 when Dad brought this professional management in. And then I think my core issue was seeing a shift in 2003, 2 years after my dad died, 10 years after I joined the company, that we were moving from a professionally managed company that's owned by a family to a family running a business. And it was a hard psychological shift that I probably never got over.
Got it. What were some of the things that happened with that shift? Like maybe you can describe that shift. Like, how did that manifest itself into, like, was it conversations or was it roles?
Well,
or
it's decision making.
decisions?
You know, we had an advisory board and a board of directors, and it was just really around all the levels of authority, who's making decisions, what processes are we using. And we're a very like structured company with the balanced scorecard and our strategy and our annual budgets and tying compensation and the phantom stock and all of those processes. And so it was just convergence of, you know, family wanting to make more and more and more decisions and be more and more involved in decisions that.
Did it feel like you were backtracking a little bit?
Well, in my personal viewpoint, my lane, it did.
Yep.
You know, but my brothers are coming up into it, and you know, and so not from their lane, which is all about family business. Everybody has a different perspective and opinion and experience, you know. So,
which I think is so. Because like I can feel it, and I have siblings too, Rachel. So I totally get it. And like, what kept the North Star of like, we're keeping this business, this shit is worth it, versus selling it? What in your family kept you guys grounded into that North Star?
Yeah, and that would be a super awesome question that I would really like to ask each shareholder in our family. You know, for me, it is carrying on my dad's legacy. I mean, and the team that works for us and how much they appreciate working for a family business and the communities where we do operate. I mean, we've seen a lot of sellouts around us, not just in our industry, but in these small rural towns. And you just, you know, the new companies that come in just philanthropically don't give back like the companies that are there that are owned by the family business. So there's a lot of intrinsic value for having a family business and for your team, for being a private company versus a public company, long-term decisions, you know, being nimble, you know, being able to compete in the market better. I mean, there's just so much value. And so and I feel so great that, you know, G1, 2, and 3 really are, you know, we're walking in lockstep now in order. That's awesome. And that we all are committed to this. And there's a company called Tugboat, and I've just recently learned about the Tugboat. Yes. So, so we've mapped out the whiteboard of we can go this direction, or we can go this Tugboat direction. But we're going to put
for the listener. I said yes because I'm familiar with it. But why don't you explain to the listeners what Tugboat is?
Well, why don't you? Because I'm not. I mean, it's just, to me, it's multiple generation family businesses that have committed to stay as a family business, and so it's a commitment on that path. And
like 100-year-old companies, and all I can picture, Rachel, is this image of one of those little teeny boats just going screw it and just plowing through all of the waves, just like relentlessly, just it's just like
But I have to say, like, one exercise that I learned, you know, just going through training in family business is, you know, like just like you said, 1, your family company is an asset. 10, your family company is an heirloom. So would you, like, no matter what, would you sell it just as an asset if you got enough money? Or 10, as an heirloom, would you never sell it? And you don't want to be at either extreme. I mean, you don't want to have your head in the sand if you don't have the competency to run your business and it's not going to be fruitful for the next 30 years. But you also just don't want to treat it and be, you know, not
crap,
cold, informed about selling an asset that could be like a golden goose, you know, not understanding that. So
did you guys ever have any of those choices? Like, I'm assuming you've had offers over the years. Like, did you guys vet out offers, and how did that discussion go?
Well, we have been in an acquisition mode. So indefinitely, you know, if people say we want to buy your company, we've just not been interested. We've always been in an acquisition mode, and we've bought other people's companies. But definitely, you know, when in your industry, when multiples get higher than they've ever been, it's like, okay, should we have a discussion? And we've had discussions because you have to know what your options are. You have to make educated and informed decisions as shareholders. But we always have come back to this place where we want to carry it on. So that's where we are today.
That's awesome. And so knowing kind of like with a long-term goal of keeping it for, like you said, for the most part, but, entertaining some ideas, but keeping it. How do you guys on the board, I'm assuming with the shareholders, determine how much you want to reinvest versus how much you want to take in distributions? Is there a process for that? And does that ever get in conflict with the managers who want to probably just scale?
Yes, that's evolved too. And we've come down to a formula of distributing 3.5% of our equity. So we have a lot that we reinvest relative to maintenance and capital. And that is why we're evolving to relative to the family office. And we just created a new position for one of our family members. So we have a chairman and president that gets paid for that full-time position. Mm-hmm. But the newest family governance position is one that works with our CFO, our family office, and our accountants. So cool. We can, just the equity, the cash flow, that there's more synergy and understanding mm-hmm. and communication between clarity and transparency between that. And so that person, shareholder in our family, then is responsible for the agendas for our family office meetings. And so he's the coordinator, and he's also the one that's working with the oldest of G3 to bring this family council together. So the oldest G3 member, who's my oldest son, is doing a presentation at our board meeting in October about this process.
That is so cool, Rachel. I have more hilarious stories than you could probably imagine of absentee or the non-active sibling who's more distributions, and the other one that's the CEO is going, I need some capital to reinvest and grow this company. And so just the amount of conflict and ridiculous stories that are just tied to that one situation is ridiculous. And that's awesome that you guys have that kind of clarity, because I'm assuming I can just probably envision how productive the conversations are, right? Like you said, hopefully there's a lot more of emotion that's dissipated out of that structure.
Yeah. And I don't want to, it's not always rosy and peachy. I mean, we get into these family office meetings, and there's stuff on the agenda. And just like you're saying, somebody has this viewpoint. Well, why should we be, buying another $10 million business? Let's just take $10 million out ourselves, And,
right.
But that's the value of communication and transparency and healthy debate, because everybody's voice should be heard. But at the end of the day, we are making decisions as a board. Now, I say mm-hmm. a board because there's 4 of us in G2, my mom in G1, and 2 outside board members. So sometimes, and we don't have all the clarity on this yet, sometimes we make a decision on the majority with our 5 shareholders, G1 and G2. And then company decisions, we definitely do it at the board meeting with the 2 outside. But there's, we're still working through that process. So
when someone doesn't get their way, how do you guys handle it?
Then we vote. Today we vote. Prior to the board making decision, we acquiesce to the G1. I hear you. So I want to go back to your evolution of leaving the business. What was that like for you? I don't know. I say that since my dad died, I've had 2 epiphanies, and leaving the business was my second epiphany. So I just, lots of stuff happened that day with a advisory board meeting, a board meeting. We had just closed on the largest acquisition that, again, doubled the size of our convenience store division. And we were already talking about selling off a piece, which I personally felt like was the cash cow. And there were multiple things going wrong relative to how decisions were being made. I went to bed that night because I had a president's council meeting. So this is my peer group of other CEOs and presidents in non-related industries. And I went to bed that night and woke up at 2 a.m, and which is totally not like me, could not sleep, and thought, what is going on? And so I got out my laptop and I literally typed my resignation letter. And I then called Stacy at 4 a.m. and said, okay, I have reached a conclusion. I'm resigning. And she's like, hold up, let's talk. And then I told my president's council group about my decision. And so the leader, the facilitator of that said, don't send that resignation letter. Let's talk. Let's regroup with the advisors. So we got Stacy together, him together, and the one that helped with the succession plan, the 5-year succession plan. So the 4 of us met And we decided I would write an 8-page letter to my mom explaining, my intent and what I thought was not happening that needed to happen. And I did that. I read the letter to her, but in the end, it was the right thing to do to leave. And so I knew I was leaving. I said, let me be the example about how to leave gracefully with no conflict. I will, nobody will be,
resentful,
questioning it won't be a bad thing. It'll be a good thing. And this will be an example about how to exit. And so I did that. I led the leadership retreat that year. And then our CFO got promoted to CEO. So it was our first non-family CEO. And at the same time, I was volunteering here at our synagogue for 10 years as the HR person. And they brought me into a meeting for org structure. And they hadn't had an executive director for 4 years. And they were a little bit of a morale crisis here. And I interviewed all this.
Where was that in the time?
So so they brought me in at the end of July, and I was announcing my exit at the end of August. And
cool.
In the end, they wanted to bring back this position, and here I am today. 5 years later, I've been the executive director of our synagogue, which is our family synagogue. So I feel like I left my family business to go to my spiritual family. And things are good. Yeah. I mean, we're truly blessed.
That's awesome, Rachel.
And it's really good.
Wow. How awesome that the timing like that lined up. And because I think, do you have any idea where, if you can recall where your head was at, if that position wasn't available? And here's the reason for the question, Rachel, is because I think a lot of people, when they sell their business or they leave and they become absentee and they're more like a passive owner, how their identity is so tied to where they were. They don't know how to transition their identity. What would you have done if that position wasn't available? Did you have any idea?
I had made the decision to leave in May. I didn't know this position was there. My thought was, in my President's Council group, I'd been in it for 7 years. And anytime anybody transitioned, they said, give it 6 months. Like, don't take another commitment for 6 months. Figure out what you want to do, what's going to make you happy. I was going to write a book, about my dad and the legacy. And it was therapeutic also, working there in the business for 24 years and leaving. But I called Stacy after this meeting that happened here at Temple. And I'm like, okay, Stacy, this is my calling. And she's like, oh my God, slow down. Like, it's too fast. I'm like, no, I know it. I know it in my heart. Just like I knew I had to leave. This is it. And yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. This has been, I can't tell you how awesome this has been. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I haven't covered, but I'm very happy for all of you guys. And if you're thinking about a family business that's listening in, what any thoughts of someone that's probably back where you were at with the ledge, any thought
yeah,
I'm not trying to find some amazing quote from you or anything. I'm just thinking about the people that are listening going, okay, that all sounds great. Like, how do you move forward in a little step that makes sense?
Yeah, I would say the core factors that helped us as a family to move forward is definitely getting an outside consultant when you need it, because you cannot sweep things under the rug. You cannot be in denial. You cannot be communicating. Communication is so key, and it's hurtful sometimes, and it's tough, but just learning how to wear those 3 hats in a family business. Transparency, so nobody feels that somebody's doing something they shouldn't, and that causes issues. So keeping things transparent, keeping the communication open, and knowing when you need an outside person to kind of level the playing field so people behave better. When you have a professional person sitting there versus just your family, people behave better. And that's important.
Isn't that the truth?
So,
one last question is when you're curious, for the people that would want out of their management role in a family business and they're trying to figure out whether they should stay in or should take a leave or go somewhere else. How did you determine what you liked to do? You know what I mean? Because you're kind of you've got the wealth stuff fairly covered. I don't know any of your numbers, but I'm assuming that probably wasn't as a huge concern of what do you enjoy doing?
Yes.
Is there anything that you like, how did you figure out what you enjoy doing, whether it's strategic decision-making or leadership? I mean, was there anything that helped you understand that?
Yeah, Stacy actually asked my brothers and I that question, back in probably 2014, like, what makes you happy? Like, if you weren't doing this job, what would you be doing? And I can say today, like, I love running operations. Like, I love putting systems together and governance together just for the institution and working with, people, and just, I like that. So that is what I'm doing here. I'm just doing it at a different place. My other brother loves cattle, and he has a farm, and he manages our farm, and he loves that. And he loves the transport company, which is what he did, but he's happy. I mean, he's on the board and he doesn't have to deal with management, and he's doing what he loves. And my next brother is the one that took the chairman and president role. He's very entrepreneurial, just like my dad. I mean, he created the car wash, division, and he's created a new concept, that is turning out to be very successful. So he's kind of leading the company and leading the succession. I mean, that I couldn't do it. I mean, I didn't have the personality for it. Too direct. I'm too like black and white. So he's doing that, and God bless him for it. And my youngest brother bought an outfitter ranch in Montana, and that is his other part of his life and what he does with his family. So I would say that, again, we were blessed to have a business that our parents invested back into that was successful, that gave us these opportunities to make choices. Not everybody has that, and I realize that, but I guess
I'll give you that. You've been very, very humble with acknowledging that you have a successful business. But I would argue that the shit you probably went through was just as hard as starting and rolling the business, because it's emotional, and the chances of people just saying hell with it and taking off are very real. And so, like, I appreciate your humbleness, but I also am recognizing I wanted to acknowledge the fact that what you've gone through is definitely probably worth the hard work.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't want to minimize it for me or for my brothers, or for my mother. I mean, it's been tough, and, but I guess in the end of the day, family harmony is something that we all truly believe in and want. And that, I guess, go back to your North Star. For us, we want family harmony. We're a close family, and like I've asked my kids, what would you think if we sold our family business? And they're like, oh my God, when would I see the uncles? I mean, like, how could we ever do that? Like, when would we ever get together as a family? So anyway, so that's been our blessing, cool. And feel like Dad's kind of still watching over us, making things move forward. And I really feel his presence, even though he's been gone a long time, and people that he gave jobs to when they were in bad crisis in their life that, tribute him to saving their life in some way. Yeah, I still feel he's with us. So it's a good story.
Oh, that's super cool. And then for G3, any what do you see as the future of G3? I mean, you see a lot of active family members, and what's working with the communication? Yeah.
So time will tell. That will evolve. The oldest is 27. The youngest is 2. So, but I said for, my oldest son who's working with my brother to bring in G3, I said, I think it's important that you interview everybody in G3. I mean, obviously you can't interview the 2-year-old, but anybody, just to say what it is and what you're trying to establish with the family council, because you need the perspectives based on this generation of age ranges and where they are and what their thoughts are. And that will evolve over time. I think that's a big thing. My dad said before he died, because he had melanoma, so we knew he was going to pass away. He said, never make a decision based on what you think I would have wanted, that the business and life evolves so much that make the best decision that you can with the information you have at the time.
Wow, that was awesome. Yeah, that's very, very insightful. Thank you so much, Rachel. This has been so fun. I've got a couple of last questions. So one is, if there's a place to get in touch with you, I don't know if it's LinkedIn or if it's nothing, or just your website.
No, I'm definitely on LinkedIn, Rachel Wallis-Andreasson. Yeah, just message me. I'd be happy to talk to anybody.
Thank you so much. And then I love asking people what the word intentional means, because it's the name of the show. I don't remember if I asked you when you're on the panel that, but what does the word intentional mean for you?
To me, it means mindful thoughts and actions that move you forward.
Ooh, love it. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate your time so much.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for having me, Ryan.